Truth Unveiled here, and today I have some interesting stuff to share with you. We're going to be talking about the Simpsons Predictive Programming for 2020 through 2021, as well as following the election, or should I say selection, and we're also going to be giving a quick COVID update as well later on in the video to come. Now, as you can read from the title right here, The Simpsons has predicted an apocalypse following the election, or should I say selection, and isn't it very interesting and suspicious indeed how as of right now they still have not even counted all of the ballots as they tell us, and that it's been delayed for whatever reason. Oh, the suspense indeed, because it's all a show, and they already know who's going to be selected ahead of time. Your vote never really counted or mattered in the first place. Now, the reason this is very interesting is because, as we've talked about before on this network, The Simpsons has predicted multiple things in the past that just so happen to come to pass. However, we also have to use discernment and know that sometimes Hollywood deceives and what they're putting on the mainstream could be lies indeed. So we have to make sure that we are aware of that. However, is it a surprise or a coincidence how from a 2004 episode, The Simpsons just so happened to know and predict about Toys R Us, and then 14 years later, Toys R Us goes out of business, but again, The Simpsons already hinted at something like that from an episode that aired in 2004. How did they know? And then there was the episode where The Simpsons just so happened to allude to 9/11 4 years before 9/11 actually happened in an episode that aired in 1997, where they just so happened to show a 9/11 New York reference in 1997. 4 years before 9/11 actually took place. Very interesting and suspicious indeed. Of course, there are way more examples and way more predictions than just this, but I just wanted to show you those two and also this most recent one where they predicted an apocalypse as well, and this episode aired recently as of a couple of days ago. Now, the episode itself is entitled Treehouse of Horror 31. It's season 32, episode 4, that aired just a few days ago in the United States. Now, what's interesting about the episode is the opening clip itself, which we're going to go over. Now, because of copyright purposes, I cannot actually show you the clip. However, if you would like to see the clip, it is linked in the description box below for your records. But the episode itself opens up with Election Day, or should I say Selection Day, that just so happened to be a few days ago with Trump and Biden signs all over the place. Now, as the clip keeps going, the clip is actually about Homer forgetting to vote, which causes and triggers the apocalypse. Now, as you keep going, you see this right here where it looks to be citizens of Springfield voting, where it says democracy ends in 8:38, vote here. Look at everyone wearing masks. Do you see what this is leading up to? A dictatorial new world order. And I'm about to show you later on in the video, when we go over the COVID update, the world's already leading to that way, folks. But the question is, are you seeing it with both your eyes open, or do you still think that this is just a cartoon? It's time to realize what time it really is. But as the episode goes on, Marge asks Homer if Homer actually voted, or will Homer vote, and then it goes into a montage of different things. Like I said, you can actually take a look at the clip yourself if you would like to, because it goes over a list of different things. But what I found most interesting about one of them is this one right here, where it says destroy democracy, and you just saw in the first one about democracy being the end of it, as in the end of what you think is a democracy. Because again, I'm going to ask you this question: was it really a democracy to begin with, when they already decide who's going to be in office regardless if you vote or not? Is it really a democracy when you have your government telling you to wear a mask and when to put it on and when not to put it on? Is it really a democracy when all of these curfews are being enforced without your permission? Is that really what a democracy is? That's for you to decide. But meanwhile, as the episode continues on, because Homer did not actually vote, the apocalypse is then triggered, and this is what it shows. It dates to January 20th, 2021, which is Inauguration Day. But as you can see, this is what's going on in the episode. Now, of course, we're not saying that this is going to happen for real. However, it's important that we warn and sound the alarm about this so that you are aware of this and without excuse, because it shows Springfield entirely on fire. It shows buildings collapse. It shows buildings completely burned down as well. And it also shows these robotic figures as well. Now, I'm going to tell you why that's very interesting too. So you see how everyone's wearing masks right now? Well, didn't your government also happen to put out a document regarding the zombie apocalypse? Who do you think the zombies really are? Because as you can see right here, what people are wearing masks, they don't even know why they're wearing them. They don't even know what the bigger agenda is and how it's conditioning them to get ready for the vaccine and enforced vaccinations. But again, just do what the government says, do what the government tells you to do, because that's what you've been conditioned to do for a very long time. That does not sound like a democracy whatsoever. But in this clip right here, you can actually see more buildings on fire. You can see something that looks very robotic, apocalyptic. You see the fires going on. You also see glass shattered and broken, which automatically reminds me of the riots that took place earlier this year. Not to mention cars completely destroyed and flipped and turned upside down. Now, again, this is what the episode is showing. That does not mean this is actually going to happen in this time, but it's important that you are aware of this. It's also important that you understand who the real enemy is as well, because upon further look, you see what? You see that the robot is owned and managed by who? U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Wow, isn't that the same organization that's funding and getting ready for these FEMA camps, or what they call shelter camps, isolation camps, or camps to be used for quarantine when people refuse the vaccine? Very interesting and suspicious indeed. Or just determined centers where they're going to take people for what? Internment and resettlement. Didn't your army also release documentation on that? Proven documentation that they will be taking detainees to an internment and resettlement facility. This is not a conspiracy. This is some real, actual, documented stuff that they're doing, and the cartoons are even showing you and telling you what they're getting ready for. But again, is this just some big coincidence? Is this just some big whatever? Or is it something that you really need to pay attention to? Because as the episode goes on to start to feature the title, then it goes to show what? Horsemen, pestilence, famine, and war? What is this reminiscent of? And then after the opening, it shows this Treehouse of Horror 31 with pestilence, famine, and war, and the four horsemen. Where does that sound familiar? Some alarm bells should be ringing indeed, but later on in the video, we're going to be going over the prophetic significance of this in case you don't already know. But before we do, I wanted to talk about how they're already getting ready for these things, how the Simpsons predictions, they're already foreshadowing, and the world is already leading in that direction, as I'm about to prove to you right now. Now, recently it was announced that Brazilians are protesting mandatory COVID-19 immunization, the Chinese vaccine. More than 300 Brazilians gathered on Sao Paulo's main commercial thoroughfare recently to protest state governor support for what? Mandatory COVID-19 immunization and testing the potential vaccine developed by China's Sinovac SVA.O. Again, is this a democracy when your government is telling you that you have to take this vaccine and that it's mandatory and that you have no legal right whatsoever to decline it? Because then it goes on to say that Doria has previously spoken in favor of making the immunizations mandatory. And this is not just when it comes to Brazil, this is all over the world. But that's not the only thing, and Brazil's not the only place, because as we talked about in our most recent video with the second lockdown taking place in Europe in places such as Germany, France, and the UK, not to mention in our update video as well, where we even showed you that there are military on the streets that are patrolling the streets. It's already starting, but this is in Wales, where it says pictures show police checkpoint in place as officers check essential travel reasons. Wales is into the second week of the firebreak lockdown, which means people are still being asked to restrict their movements for essential travel only. But now what? Police checkpoints? Do you see what this is leading up to? Martial law, as we've talked about on this network for how many years now, that soon enough, what? Coming to a police state near you, that the police and military would soon enough start to police the streets, and that there would be checkpoints in place that are what? Restricting and limiting travel all over the place. What do you think this is leading up to? Now, if we scroll down a little bit, you can actually see the pictures. I will link them in the description box below. And once again, a special thanks to everyone who's been sending me updates and sending me articles via email. I really do appreciate it, and it does help contribute to the channel a whole ton. And you all know who you are. I really do thank you in advance. And if you have anything interesting and suspicious indeed that you would like to submit that you think is very important, please do so at my email. I might not respond, but please know that I am taking a look at it. So you see the pictures right here of the police that are patrolling and checkpoints that are already in place right here. You see the officers wearing masks to check, and they're stopping people to check to see if they are residents of the town, if they are located near the town, and what? For essential journeys only, as they're going to word it. Do you see again what this is leading up to? More of a police dictatorial new world order type of government where there is no democracy. In fact, there never was democracy to begin with. How is there democracy if you have to be told where you could go, when you could go? How is there democracy at all? These are questions you really need to start thinking about and really start to see what this is leading up to. That what? Stripping away of the little to no rights that you already do not have, as you see with the selection, because it's all staged and pre-planned ahead of time. Now, all of this will be available in the description box for you to take a look at on your own time. Now, there's this article that says right here when it comes to Liverpool, UK, it says UK to pilot new COVID-19 mass testing approach in Liverpool. Pay careful attention, because these places that are listed are what? Guinea pigs and tests for the rest of the world, specifically America, real soon. But it says here, Britain will launch a COVID-19 mass testing pilot scheme in the northwest city of Liverpool this week, according to them, offering everyone tests whether or not they have symptoms in an attempt to find a new way to use testing to limit the spread of coronavirus. That's what they're going to tell you. Now, the government said that the Liverpool pilot would start as of tomorrow, actually, using PCR swab tests, the default testing method to date, as well as new lateral flow tests and so-called LAMP tests aimed at bringing faster results without the need for laboratory testing or processing. Everyone living or working in the city, one of the worst hit in the country, will be offered repeat tests at existing sites, as well as numerous new sites, including care homes, schools, universities, and workplaces. Now, it's interesting too, because what? Many countries are already exploring this of mass testing and how what they say can contain the virus. They're going to keep telling people and the sleeping people that, oh, it's just to contain the virus, and oh, it's just to help limit the spread of COVID. But that's not what it's for. It's to control the people and get them ready and conditioned for their new world order draconian system, just like the Simpsons showed you at the very beginning of that episode. And even recently, 2/3 of the Slovakian population were already tested under such a scheme. Now, again, we've been talking about this stuff for a long time, years before COVID even hit, about checkpoints being placed up in different places and regions all over the world, specifically in America, especially at highways and tollways. Again, folks, the reason they're doing all this stuff is because when another national emergency is declared, or when real stuff starts to hit the fan, they're not going to want you to leave the city. They're going to keep you trapped in these cities so that what? So that it's easier control and more control, and they have the cell phones and everything and cell towers for tracking as well. You see, it was all planned ahead of time. But this report came out last month from the BBC, which I found interesting, that I wanted to share, that says COVID or coronavirus checkpoints placed up amid new Irish restrictions. That's what they're going to keep calling it. It says here, more than 100 Garda or Irish police checkpoints have been placed up across the Republic of Ireland. They're going to tell you that the checkpoints are to encourage people to remain in their own countries and only undertake essential journeys. That's what it's going to start off with, that, oh, it's to encourage you to stay home. Oh, it's to encourage you not to leave the country unless you're going for essential purposes. But soon enough, it's going to be, well, unless you take the vaccine, you can no longer leave the country. Unless you take the vaccine, you can no longer leave the state. Unless you take the vaccine, you can no longer leave your house, or they're going to have housing for you in a shelter facility. Do you see the bigger agenda behind all this? And of course, they're going to tell you that, oh, it's to keep you safe. It's to keep the people safe. It's to keep everyone safe. That's why we're doing this. But is that really why? And last but not least, there have also been reports that have recently come out about the COVID-19 vaccine, which we've been tracking on this channel extensively. But now they're talking about that it could be released as early as next month. Wow, what perfect timing, especially how that's right after the selections, right before Inauguration Day as of 2021 in January, so about 2 months from now. So what perfect timing and what perfect coincidence to have all of these second lockdowns begin once again right in time for the COVID vaccine. Now, according to this article, they might even be able to administer the vaccines from the beginning of December onward, according to a medical trade publication, Pulse. Now, again, we have to keep track of this because this is what they're telling us. It could change. It might be later. It might be sooner. We don't actually know. However, what we do know is that the world is leading towards what? Their new world order. This is what the world is leading up to, and I can no longer sugarcoat this stuff, folks. It's important that you see this and realize this, and that the world is not all hunky-dory that the mainstream is trying to make you think. That no, there are some serious implications that are taking place, and what judgment is right around the corner, just like we talked about with the 400 years, and that afterward that nation would be judged. But now here we are once again showing you the title card of Treehouse of Horror 31 from the Simpsons episode. And of course, what is this reminiscent of? The four horsemen, the apocalypse, Revelation chapter 6. Now we're also going to go over a few other verses that are very important with this. The first one is Yakazakal, or Ezekiel chapter 14 verse 21, and I'm going to read all of these verses with you. You can follow along with us or you can just listen, but it says, "For thus said the sovereign Yahuwah, how much more it shall be when I send my four evil judgments on Yahushua or Jerusalem, the sword and scarcity of food, and evil beasts and pestilence to cut off man and beast from it." So we see right here that if a nation was idolatrous or if a nation was involved in transgression, that there were judgments that were sent upon the nation. And because we know that our Creator does not change, it's the same in this time as well, that if these nations do not repent, namely America and Europe specifically, that there will be judgments that will be sent their way. And it says right here, the sword, which is war, scarcity of food, and evil beasts, and pestilence, just like what so happened to be named right here. Now there's also Zechariah chapter 6 verses 1 through 8 that also mention and allude to four chariots and also the same type of horses. You can read that on your own time, but I wanted to get to Kazun, Revelation chapter 6 verses 1 through 8. And again, all of these verses are quoted in the description box below, so you can have reference to them on your own time. But now we're going to read Kazun, Revelation chapter 6 verses 1 through 8 together, where it says, "And I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard one of the four living creatures saying, like a sound of thunder, 'Come and see.'" Verse 2, "And I looked and saw a white horse, and he who sat on it holding a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went out overcoming and to overcome. And when he opened the second seal, I saw the second living creature saying, 'Come and see.'" Verse 4, "And another horse, fiery red, went out, and it was given to the one who sat on it to take peace or shalom from the earth, and that they should slay one another. And a great sword was given to him. And when he opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, 'Come and see.' And I looked and saw a black horse, and he who sat on it holding a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, 'A measure of wheat for a denarius, and 3 measures of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine.' And when he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature saying, "Come and see." And I looked and saw a green horse, and he who sat on it had the name Death, and Shaul follow with him. And authority was given to them over a fourth of the earth to kill with sword, and with hunger, and with death, and by the beasts of the earth. And there's one other verse I wanted to go over with you as well. It's from here, the Apocalypse of Abraham, chapter 30. We've gone over this before, actually, when we talked about the 400 years, but it talks about what? The 10 plagues that is against the heathen or these other nations. One of them is what? Sorrow for much need. The second one is fiery conflagrations for the cities. The third is what? Destruction by pestilence among the cattle. Didn't we just read that in Revelation 6? Pestilence. The fourth one is famine. Didn't we just read that too? The fifth one is what? Destruction by earthquake. And the sword. The sword is war. We read that one as well. Increase of hail and snow. Wild beasts. We read that one. Pestilence and hunger. We read that one. And the ninth one's execution by the sword. And then the 10 thunder voices and destroying earthquakes. And the last place we're going to be reading from is actually coming from the Apocrypha. In case you don't know about it, it's books that they took out of the original scriptures because they don't want people knowing truth. Because if you look up the word Apocrypha, it actually means to hide or to conceal when it comes to the etymology. But this book is 2nd Esdras, chapter 16. Now, the verses in context are verses 18 through 39. We're going to go over verses 18 through 21 together, where it says right here, "The beginning of sorrows and great mournings, the beginning of famine and great death, the beginning of wars, and the power shall stand in fear, the beginning of evils. What shall I do when these evils shall come?" Verse 19, "Behold, famine and plague, tribulation and anguish are sent as scourges for amendment." Verse 20, "But for all these things they shall not turn from their wickedness, nor be always mindful of their scourges." Verse 21, "Behold, victuals shall be so good cheap upon the earth, that they shall think themselves to be in good case, and even then shall evils grow upon earth." And listen to this part, "Sword, famine, and great confusion." Verse 22, "For many of them that dwell upon earth shall perish of famine, and the other that shall escape the hunger shall the sword destroy." Well, isn't that very similar to what we just read in Revelation chapter 6 with mention of famine and war? And you already see that going on, or the building blocks of it when it comes to what? When it comes to America running out of food, and with COVID going on and soon enough not being able to bring food and supply food into the stores, or soon enough places closing down because of the lockdown and the economy collapsing. What is that really leading up to? But in 2nd Esdras chapter 16, we're going to jump down to verse 37, where it says, "Behold, the plagues draw nigh and are not slack." Verse 38, "As when a woman with child in the 9th month bringeth forth her son, with 2 or 3 hours of her birth great pains compass her womb, which pains, when the child cometh forth, they slack not a moment." Verse 39, "Even so shall not the plagues be slack to come upon the earth, and the world shall mourn, and sorrow shall come upon it on every side." And as we've gone over in 2nd Esdras chapter 15, verses 10 through 12, that Egypt shall mourn, America shall mourn. That's why they already foreshadowed the death of America with Medea in the movie, with what? Medea's family funeral, and also with what? Time's Up, as we've gone over before several times on this network. So what is all of this telling you? That judgment is even at the door. That's why more than ever, it's important that you are having a relationship with your Creator by getting to know His name, by seeking Yahuwah and His true Son Yahusha, so that you will be saved and so that you will be free from everything to take place, and so that you will be worthy to escape everything that is to come, because we know we are protected indeed. There is nothing to fear and no fear with everything that is about to take place, because we know where our refuge and our help comes from. At least I pray you do, and I pray that you are having a relationship with your Creator by getting to know His name. This is Truth Unveiled here, saying as always, Shalom.